Hi there, the name's Nico, and today I will be going over my tier list for the best and worst characters in Solo's Eternal Return Black Survival. The tier list you see in front of you is the tier list I made almost exactly 1 month ago, on March 24th, 2021. This was from the patch when Bernice was out, and they released the patch notes for the next patch, but they weren't implemented yet. So the placement of Bernice was based on what I thought the patch notes would change about him, since when Bernice came out, he was broken and could basically root you forever. My opinion at the time was that Bernice would go from S tier to A tier, but you'll see where I place him and the others with the current meta now. Before I start, I want to define the categories. So D tier is the don't play this character, they have nothing going for them category. C tier is the could be better category. B tier is the basic character, have one thing going for them. B plus is lacking one thing, but if they got that, they would be A tier. A tier is awesome character to use in solos category. A plus tier is they would be S tier, but there is one fault with them. And S tier is this character is super powerful, please slightly nerf. With this in mind, let's begin. So first is Dagger Jackie. Dagger Jackie is the best of the Jackies in my opinion. She has a lot of weapons, especially now that the new Damascus Steel Thorn was added. Dagger's skill is an especially safe skill. She has good transitional items. Overall, she is an awesome choice in solos. Axe Jackie, on the other hand, could be better. She has a good early game, can get some kills in, but that's about it. She doesn't have any transition items. Axe skill is not much. It is not the worst weapon skill out there, but could be a lot better. It has a 50-second cooldown time, which is one of the highest weapon skill cooldowns out there. But she's still Jackie and can run, so not a D tier character. If she got a legendary axe or a mithril axe or some transition weapon and axe skill was better, she would be ranked higher. Two-handed sword Jackie is the basics of what a character should have. She has decent weapon choices, she has late game items, two-handed sword weapon skill is good, but she's not the best two-handed sword user out there in my opinion. And dagger skill is just better because it can be used offensively and defensively, while parry is just defensively, so I'd say she's B tier. Dual Sword Jackie is between two-handed and Dagger Jackie, sitting at B plus tier. She still has weapon options and routing. She can transition to Starsteel Twin Swords. She has Jackie's kit, but she is not A tier because she is limited by her weapon skill. The Dual Sword Rampage is strong, but once it has been used, you have to hope you can finish them off in time, and this skill is better to use against squishy characters. It also has a fixed 40-second cooldown, so you'll have to wait some time before you can use it again. They have also nerfed dual swords, so it's not as strong as it once was, so overall B plus tier. Next is Aya. I'm just going to start with Sniper Aya since she was my main character for Season 1. She's honestly D tier and is the worst solo character in Eternal Return. Sure, she can get some early game kills like Axe Jackie, but she doesn't really have mobility. If she is jumped on, she's done for. Sniper skill is also so circumstantial that it's better to just play a different Aya. Like, sniper skill needs a good clearing, no bushes, and it has to be day. She's a lot better in duos and squads, but in solos, she sucks. AR or Assault Rifle Aya is a solid A tier. She'd be better if she had more weapon choices. Like, she has other weapons she can choose from, but the Acne works so well with her kit that there isn't really a reason to build the other weapons. The Acne was released in between my last tier list and this tier list, and with Acne you are limited by routing, since you need to start factories to get all the items you need to build ENAD. This is because you have to get crosses and holy grails to finish some of the items in your build. Acne is also a 3-zone weapon, and you are stuck on a green weapon until you get to Chapel, so if someone who finished their weapon quickly runs into you before you can finish your weapon, you are done. You are the 18th out of 18 character, or you win. There really isn't an in-between. The air skill is also so good, but it has been reworked as it no longer provides knockback and reloads your gun instead. It also does more damage now than before. If it has more routes and she wouldn't die early, she should probably be placed in S tier. Pistol Aya I would say is A plus tier. She has different weapons she can choose from, multiple routes, pistol skill works really well on her and gives her more mobility, and with the crown recipe change, she can now make crown between Hospital Pond, which allows her to be even stronger early on if she builds elegance. Pistol Aya is in a good spot right now. Next is Hyunwoo. Previously, I put him in S tier because he is tanky, good at running, and has a variety of weapons. I think now that ranked isn't really played, I have had some time to think about it, and I would say glove skills A plus tier and Tonfa is A tier. Glove is A plus because it has a wide variety of weapons, lots of routing options. You can change to Imperial Silk gloves, also known as Mithril gloves, and a bunch of other armor. Glove skill also is quite strong. It has the shortest cooldown of any weapon skill and increases attack range and damage. Really, any buffs would make him S tier. Why Tonfa is A tier? Because unlike glove skill, there is no traditional gloves like Mithril Tonfa, Coarse Core Tonfa, etc. And Tonfa skill is not a bad weapon skill, but glove skill is a lot better. Changes to these two would place him higher on the tier list. Next is Magnus. Magnus is not a good spot right now in general. Magnus I would put in B tier. He really does not have much going for him. He really only has one weapon option, Spy Umbrella. There are some builds with other bats, but they don't do as well as Spy Umbrella. Monkey King Bar is so strong, so Magnus has that going for him. His passive is not that great. Bat skill has also been buffed, but is not as great of a weapon skill. They also have changed Magic's kit to be a bat and not a hammer, which would also work on Magnus, but this was changed in this patch, so I don't have enough information to say if this is a huge change for him or not. It does have skill amp on it, so I do think it has potential, but it would probably want to make Monkey King Bar regardless because of how strong Monkey King Bar is. They have also nerfed MKB the past few patches, but the win rate is still quite high, sitting at about 35%. Hammer Magnus is even worse. The thing that makes it worse is that the weapon skill is even worse than bat skill. Hammer weapon skill is one of the weakest weapon skills in my opinion, and you are really limited to the Fang Mace if you want to fight. Some people may play HP regen Magnus, but you generally aren't getting kills unless you third party. They didn't add the Peacebringer, but it's too early to tell if it's good or not. Magnus is being worked this coming patch, so his placement might change in the coming patch. Also, Magnus is not really used in NA, so I may have underestimated his power. Next is Fiora. We'll start with Rapier. Rapier is still A plus tier in my opinion. She has a lot of weapon options, good transition items. Rapier skill is one of the best weapon skills and works well with Fiora's kit, since she can close the gap between herself and her enemy. A bunch of Rapiers have been nerfed since the last tier list, but she can use an extra attack compulse or W in a combo now, since it has a shorter cooldown when you proc Touche, which is her passive. She is slightly limited on routing since the Rapiers she uses are built out of the same blue weapon, but overall she is still an A plus tier character. Next is Spear Fiora. Originally I placed Spear in B plus tier, but I have moved her to B tier. She really only uses Gentian Silver Gun, and Spear has been nerfed quite a lot. There are some people using 18-foot Spear in Dragon Guando, but 18-foot Spear is at least 3 zones, and Dragon Guando has movement speed loss on it, which is not ideal for Fiora. In order to win with Fiora, you have to upgrade your weapon to Spirit of Longinus. Blazing Lance and Cosmic Maiden are okay transition items, but Spirit of Longinus is a lot better, having almost 3 times the win rate comparing to the other transition items. If she had better spears, routings, and didn't rely on needing a VF blood sample, which is the hardest RNG item to get at this time, then she would be placed higher. The last weapon type of the Fioras is Two-Handed Sword. For the longest time, Two-Handed was not that great on Fiora. It still really isn't, but I would say is better than Spear, which is why I put it at B plus tier. This really has to do with HP regen. Two-Handed Sword Fiora. HP regen Fiora is not that bad right now with how the changes to the Sinal Circle work. If she has the highest timer, it's really hard to kill her quick enough for most characters before time runs out. She's even fine with Manahoshi Sao, but that is a 4-zone weapon which can take a long time to build compared to Hyung Thien, which you can finish your build in practically 3 zones. If you use Theon Thien, you have to transition to a late game sword like Mana Hoshizawa or Dine Sleef, which has more than a 50% win rate. I think Two-Handed Sword is just a worse Rapier since it doesn't work as well with her passive as Rapier, and Rapier skill is just too good on Fiora. With that in mind, Two-Handed Fiora is B plus tier. For Nadine, I put Bow Nadine at B plus tier and Crossbow at A tier. Nadine as a whole is strong early game since she can build her weapon quite quickly and can get early game kills. She is strong late game because of her passive stacks since her ultimate and Q scale off her passive. Her mid game is her weakest and she hasn't gotten most out of her passive at this point, and other characters have a chance to burst her down. Bow Nadine is B plus because she has good routing, good weapons, but doesn't have a great escape from battle if she needs it. Bow skill is not the most useful skill in battle, since opponents know where it will land before it does, and have a good chance at dodging hand. Crossbow Nadine, on the other hand, has crossbow weapon skill, which allows her to push back characters that are in a cone from her. This allows her to get away from characters that could burst her down, like Fiora, and escape, or to get that last damage in that she needs to kill them. Nadine is in a good spot right now. So Throw Zahir, I would place in A+ tier. The main thing holding him back is that he really only has one weapon option and is a 3-zone weapon. But if he had more weapon options, or the weapon was a 2-zone weapon, or he was buffed in some way, he would be S tier. Throw skill is also not bad. Shuriken Zahir is A tier. It is not as strong as Throw Zahir, but it has a lot more weapon options, which also means more routing options. The Shuriken weapon skill is good, but it does not work that well with his kit compared to Throw skill. Zahir is a solid A tier character. Next is Hart. I broke Hart into 2 categories, ENAD and Spell Amp. I didn't see that they had different icons for ENAD and Spell Amp, but I changed it at the end of the tier list. Hart in general has a strong kit. The guitar weapon skill is good. Her ultimate allows her to reset a fight and generally makes it to be in her favor. For ENAD, she's still a solid A+ character. The only thing about her that is bad is that she needs all of her build done to really win, since she needs her ENAD damage. She also generally only runs one route, which is limiting if people aren't in her zone. She does have the option to run different routes, but I have never seen her run a different route other than Factory, Cemetery, Chapel, Uptown, Temple. But if they buffed her in any way, she would be S tier. Spell Amp, on the other hand, is B+ tier. The problem with Spell Amp is that there is only 2 guitars, and there are no transition guitars for Spell Amp, unlike ENAD. Spell Amp damage from evolution points has also been nerfed since the last tier list. I didn't make a difference between ENAD and Spell Amp last tier list, so I cannot compare to what I thought before. But if Spell Amp had a transition guitar, it would be at a better spot right now. Next is Isol. Isol in general is a pretty strong character because his passive allows him to place traps quickly, plus his ultimate counts as trap mastery, which means that you can do a lot more damage with traps if you craft them and use them compared to other characters. Traps are quite strong late game, where you can place a bunch in the final area and as a result do a lot of damage to players. AR Isol is in a really good spot right now. The Agni is really strong, but what I see a lot of Isols do is build the Type 95 and then transition to Agni late game, since the Type 99 is a quick build. Traps are still quite strong, especially with the final zone changes. You can just trap your square and most people won't bother you, and if they do, they are most likely dead between all the traps and your own power. AR skill was changed since the last tier list, as it doesn't have knockback anymore, but I still think it is a good place. Pistol Isol is an A tier character. The pistol skill is still good, but the power of AR is really strong. Because of this, Pistol Isol is lower than AR Isol, but is still an A tier character. Next is Li Dailin. Glove Li Dailin is our first S tier character. Her kit is quite strong, she can burst people down, and she has a silence which is quite strong and is one of the only characters that can silence characters. In terms of Glove is stronger than her other weapon choice, Nunchaku, because she has more weapon options, has a weapon she can transition to for late game, and Glove skill is quite strong. Nunchaku Li Dailin, on the other hand, is still A tier because she is Li Dailin, but nunchucks are not as good as Glove. The nunchuck skill can easily be heard if you are trying to ambush an enemy. They did add another nunchuck since the last tier list, so there are more routing options, but she still has no late game weapon, which makes her not as strong late game compared to Glove Li Dailin. So overall, a solid A tier character. So for Yuki, I would put Two-Handed Sword A tier. I don't have too much to say here. He has a lot of weapon options, has late game items he can transition to. He can pick and choose fights using his EWE combo. The parry skill can block damage from other characters for a short period of time. With all of this in mind, this puts Two-Handed Sword Yuki at A tier. Dual Swords is B tier though. I would say Dual Swords is not as strong as Two-Handed because Dual Swords are reliant on his Dual Sword Rampage, the weapon skill. Most of the damage is from the weapon skill, and once that is gone, you hopefully have killed the opponent at that time, and if you are third partied, you are probably screwed. You have everything else that Two-Handed Sword has, but slightly worse, which is why Dual Swords is B+ tier. Next is Hyejin. Hyejin's kit is really strong with the Fear. Fear causes a lot of unique interactions, and she can run away from fights easily using Fear and her E, which allows her to teleport. In terms of bow Hyejin, the elemental bow is quite strong and works quite well with her kit. She cannot be an S tier character because she really can only use elemental bow, which limits her on routing. Bow skill is good for farming animals, but is generally weaker in combat since the skill is obvious in terms of where it will land so people can dodge it. But with proper kiting and using Hair Fear, you can push people into the bow skill. She does have a high skill ceiling, but if you can master that, she is a solid A+ character. Shuriken, on the other hand, is not nearly as strong. The thing Shuriken has is that it has more routing options, but because Elemental Bow is strong on Hyejin, as well as the fact that Caltrops aren't as strong as they used to be, AM Bow skill works better with Hyejin's kit. She's a solid B+ tier character. Xiukai is still an S tier character. His passive allows him to infinitely scale without attacking anyone, which allows him to kill people with higher weapon mastery if they are squishy characters. His ultimate range in Cone is quite strong and can bring someone from 100% to 0%. His kit in general is quite strong. Dagger is slightly better because of the Dagger skill, giving him an escape if he needs to. They did add a new Dagger, which is not the best on him, but does give him more options. Spear also has 2 options, and they have buffed the CDR and Lance of Poseidon. Spear also adds an extra slow, which works with his ultimate. So it really just comes down to the fact that Dagger skill allows him to run from fights. So Sissela. Sissela's kit is quite good. She can pull people in, and her ultimate hits everyone on the map, and does more damage to people in the same zone as her, and her ult does more damage the lower her health is. Also, her passive makes it so that she gains more HP, and her skill amp increases the lower her HP is, which is very strong in fights. Last time I said Shuriken was stronger than Throw, but I would now say that Throw is stronger than Shuriken. Both are good on her, which is why Throw is A+ tier and Shuriken is A tier. Sissela in general doesn't really have a means of escape. She can pull herself through walls, and she has minor movement with her W, but she's pretty much stuck in a fight. Throw is quite strong because of the Ruthenium Marble, but Ruthenium also is a 3-zone weapon, and they nerfed healing reduction since the last tier list. There are builds with all the other throw weapons except Smoke Bomb, so there are a lot of routing options. There are no late game weapon transition items for her, but her base items are not bad. The throw skill is fine, as it allows you to block vision of your opponents and slows them, which gives you time to do damage. Shuriken is also good on her, has multiple routing options and weapons. You can also upgrade your weapon to Suit or Sauna, but this depends on what your starting weapon was. Caltrops aren't as strong as they used to be, but they do work well with their kit since she can pull people into the Caltrops. Throw weapons are stronger than Shuriken weapons stat-wise as well, in my opinion, but still a solid A tier character. Next is Chiara. Chiara is still a solid character, and I would put her in A tier. You can run into 2 variations of her, crit or tank. For crit, there are weapons you can upgrade to. For tank, you generally want to be at Mistletoe, so there is no weapon upgrade. You're limited to 1 weapon, which limits routing. Crit has a few more routing options since you have 2 rapiers to choose from, Durandal or Voltacleto. Chiara's kit gives her plenty of tools to escape fights since she can root people, and her passive gives her movement speed if her opponent has the max amount of stigmas. Chiara is at a good spot right now. Adriana is our next S tier character. Months ago, I would have put Adriana at B or C tier in solos, but they have buffed Adriana a lot the past couple of months, and now she is at S tier. She has plenty of weapons to choose from, has good transition items for late game. She can pick and choose fights by either using her Fire Escape, which is her E, or by using her Oil Slicks or ultimate to slow and or knock back enemies. She can also kite people for days, which prevents most melees from even getting close to her to do damage. Even for ranged characters, she can be a struggle to fight against because of the ultimate knockback, interrupting skills, and autos. Because of this, she is an S tier character. Shoichi is a B+ tier character. He is limited on using the Mount Slicer, which limits routing. He has a means of escapes with Dagger skill, but he doesn't have too much of a movement ability. He can dash towards daggers and enemies, but if he's trying to escape and there are no animals nearby, there's not much you can do. You also need his ult to engage in fights and is quite weak without it. Shoichi is also a character that is heavily ping reliant, which means you'll do better the closer your ping is to 0 MS. If he has more weapon options and didn't need to rely on ping, which I don't think they can change at all, he would be an A tier character. Silvia is the next character. Silvia has gone through a lot of changes since the last tier list, her early game bite cooldown being the most significant. Her early game is weaker than before, but otherwise she is an S tier character. Silvia is the strongest character when she reaches level 6, since she unlocks 3 more abilities when she is in bike form. Silvia has plenty of running options since there are multiple guns that work with her. She has good late game items. She can escape any fight she wants to because of her bike. Her combo between human form and bike form is insane. Because of these things, she is an S tier character. Next is Emma. Emma is also an S tier character. Emma has multiple weapon options. She has items she can change to late game. She can pick and choose her fight with her ultimate and W, which allows her to pull people in towards her hat as well as teleport her. Emma's kit is also quite strong, with the bunny morph being very powerful. Caltrops are also a good weapon skill, and with some skill you can pull people into the Caltrops using her alt and W, the hat. All of this combined makes her an S tier character. Lenox is next. I do mean Lenox, but I would say that she is a B+ tier character. They gave Lenox a good buff for solos since the last tier list. Her main problem is that she is limited to one weapon and one route, being Avenue Beach or Beach Avenue. She doesn't have too many transition items for late game. Her kit is good and whip skill is quite powerful if she lands it. They also changed the recipe for Crown, which impacts Lenox significantly since she can no longer build Crown between Avenue and Beach, and she does not have much of a means of escape. She can only push people away with her E, so characters with movement abilities most likely can catch up to her. The main thing is, if they gave her another weapon that works with her kit, and or allowed the Gleipnir to be built on multiple routes, then she'd be an A tier character. But for now, she is a B+ tier character. So next we have Rozzi. Rozzi has been receiving buff after buff, and now it's a meme about buffing Rozzi. They have started to nerf her a bit since the last tier list though, but overall it's mainly been buffs. She has multiple routing options, good late game items, and an escape with her W and pistol skill if she needs it. Rozzi is at a good place right now, which is why I put her in A tier. Luke is our next character. I would put Luke in B+ tier. Luke really only has 2 weapon options early on. There is really no spy umbrella Lukes, but these weapons have okay routing options. They could be better. Luke has great transition items, with Monkey King Bar being so strong. They have been nerfing Monkey King since last patch because of how strong it is. Luke does not have a means of escaping a fight as he has no movement ability. Bat skill has been buffed, but is still not the best weapon skill out there. Luke also needs the scale early on, or else he is not that good. Because he needs a Monkey King Bar and scaling to win, he is a B+ tier character, and not A tier. We have Cathy now. I had a hard time deciding if Cathy is an A tier character or an A+ tier character, but I ended up putting her in A+ tier. Cathy is really strong right now. She has multiple weapon options to choose from and routing options. They have also added a new dagger since the last tier list. Her kit is quite strong, but they have been reworking Cathy to have more skill involved in terms of positioning since the last tier list. Cathy is somewhat limited with escaping a fight since her Q only allows her to dash towards an enemy or animal. Her ult allows her to escape a fight, but it has a long cooldown, so you have to wait a while until you can use it again. She does have dagger skill, which helps her with engaging or disengaging a fight. Cathy's transition items are great, but she has the same problem as Luke, meaning that she needs these items in order to win. With all this in mind, she's an A+ tier character. Next is Adela, which is probably the biggest change on this tier list. Last time I ranked her as D tier in solos. She really sucked, but since the last tier list she has received a lot of buffs and reworks, and as a result I would put her in A tier. Both Spell Amp and Crit are viable on her. Spell Amp is limited on routing because you can only build Mistletoe on her. Crit has more late game items than Spell Amp, but they both still have a good amount. She does have a means of escape with her E. She has access to Rapier skill, which can be used to close the gap between her enemies. Adela's kit also allows her to do damage from afar, and she can pull off a mean combo and take her enemy's health from 100 to 0 using her ult and some well-placed chest pieces. This makes her a solid A tier character. Bernice has also made some changes. I made my previous tier list before he received any nerfs. I had access to the patch notes, but I didn't know how much would change about him. Bernice went from being broken to B tier. Bernice really only uses 2 guns. Most people do not build Spell Amp on him, but Crit, attack speed, and lifesteal. He doesn't have a late game item. His transition items are okay. Bernice has no means of escaping a fight. He can chase people running away from him, but not vice versa. His kit is okay. His bear traps, unlike Isol's, do not increase trap mastery, so they aren't as good. With all this in mind, he is a B tier character. This is the first of the new characters since the last tier list, which is Barbara. Barbara was absolutely broken when she came out, but she has had some nerfs since. She really only has one starting weapon, Spy Umbrella, which is also a 3-zone weapon. This limits her on routing a bit. They have changed Magic Stick from being a hammer to a bat, which gives her another late game weapon to build into. Monkey King Bar is still quite strong, so most people go for this instead of Magic Stick, but this gives her more options late game. She somewhat has an escape. Her E gives her movement speed, and her Alt Q allows her to teleport away if she needs to, but then her ult is on cooldown. She loses a lot of power if she does not have her ult up. Her best combo is her ult plus W, and has been this way since she came out. It can take someone from 100 to 0, since it allows her to spam her W without needing SP, and there is no cooldown on her W, plus it does more damage. If she didn't need to rely on her ult and W so much, and if she had more weapon options, she would be A tier, but right now I would place her high B plus tier. I did debate this a lot though, and wasn't sure whether to put her in B plus or A tier. And last we have Alex. Alex is honestly underwhelming. They did change some things about him, but they were minor. Alex is a C tier character. Hopefully he'll get some buffs, or maybe someone will figure something out about him or master him, but there are a lot of characters better than him. He does have a lot of routing options because he has 4 weapons to choose from, and to use him optimally, you need to build 1 melee and 1 ranged weapon. Because of this, you lack a lot of inventory space early on, since you need to carry the resources to build 2 weapons instead of 1. He does have late game items. He does not have a mean of escape though, and is quite slow compared to a lot of other characters. He can use pistol skill if he uses pistol if he needs an escape. His damage is still lackluster, but he sucks less than when he came out, which is why he's C tier. Okay, now I'm going to put them in order in their respective tiers, with the best in that tier being on the left and the worst in that tier being on the right. Please keep in mind though, if someone is on the right side of their tier, it does not mean they are bad, unless you aren't talking about C tier characters. It just means that there are characters that are slightly better than them, but they still all belong in the same tier. And yeah, this is the final tier list. I plan on doing this monthly since too soon means not much has changed, but later than a month is missing a new meta and characters. So if you like these types of videos, please give this a like and subscribe to more ERBS content. I'm also on Twitch and stream 4 days a week. You can ask me any questions there as well. I hope to see you there or at the next video.